I need to deliver for you an update on the really terrifying constitutional crisis that I told you about earlier today that we are living through. And while it is a completely fair and ongoing criticism that outlets like CNN do not sound the alarm enough and can participate in normalizing the behavior of someone like Trump too much. Here, they're actually using the term, and I'm glad to see that, constitutional crisis, and giving an important update on this that you're going to watch. And then we'll go through, and one thing that I think is important is to see not just what are the facts of what's happening as Trump seeks to invalidate really both the legislative and judicial branches, but also, how are the people who think that's okay defending him? And yes, we'll check in on Scott Jennings, and we'll check in on some other people as a CNN debate took place that I think is indicative of how weak those arguments are. If you appreciate the show and you're not subscribed yet, please do.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks, and tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis. Now, the first shoe on this dropped when a federal judge today said the White House is defying his order to unfreeze billions of dollars in federal aid, marking the first time that we've had a judge expressly accuse the Trump administration of ignoring a court ruling. And in a separate case today, federal employees here in Washington told a judge that the administration was defying another order by not reinstating workers who had been put on leave. Now, this all has prominent Democrats and many of the nation's top constitutional scholars declaring that the U.S. is on the brink of a reckoning. The Trump Justice Department says the president should have the authority to decide how to run the government and that these judges are overreaching. And some of the president's allies say the judges should not be judging any of the moves to shrink the federal government. That includes special government employee Elon Musk, who this weekend accused a judge who was blocking his Doge team from accessing Treasury Department systems of being corrupt, with Musk calling for the judge to be impeached. Vice President Vance is not going quite that far, but made clear where he sees the judiciary's limits, writing, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power." The question tonight, of course.
She's about to get into the, but here's why they're wrong, at least a little bit of it. I will say, though, again, on the reporting, just outlets like CNN do get really afraid to be accused of being too liberal. But at some point, can we please not do this? J.D. Vance articulated his position on where he thinks the judicial branch's power really lies. And you also have Elon Musk expressing the please add in some words. I don't know how you would write this in a way that CNN would ever do, but they're not expressing an opinion they have or a stance they have. This is not their stance when it was Biden in power. When Biden had judges telling him he couldn't do things, they would actually lie and say Biden was violating the court's ruling when Biden wasn't. Like the student loan debacle, we'll get into that in a second. That wasn't what Biden was doing, but they accused him of it, and they said it was proof that he's like a dictator. So this is not a stance they have. I wish that would be noted. This is a stance they're pretending to have right now, hypocritically, because it's Trump who they want to have the dictatorial power.
Legitimate power. The question tonight, of course, is who determines what is legitimate power? The president himself had this to say tonight.
Well, you get some very bad rulings, and it's a shame to see it, frankly. They want to sort of tell everybody how to run the country when they say that certain people in charge of massive agencies or people doing very, very important people, smart people doing investigations of fraud. And they don't talk about what you're looking at. All they just say is, oh, it's unconstitutional. Judges should be ruling. They shouldn't be dictating what you're supposed to be doing.
A little bit more to play, but what? What do you think ruling is? They're dictating to you what is and isn't constitutional. He's just saying mumbo jumbo. You know, people keep telling me, the judiciary is supposed to deem what is not constitutional. But that doesn't make any sense because their rulings always say that what I'm doing is not constitutional. So what? Square that circle.
Now, as far as the judiciary is concerned, when judges issue rulings, they are dictating what you're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing if they determine that you are breaking the law. Of course, that's how the legal system works, and the recourse is to appeal those rulings.
Correct. And then the president, in who they're nominating for judicial positions, has power in impacting the judiciary, as the judiciary has power in overseeing the actions of the executive branch, as the legislative branch has power of overseeing the actions of the executive branch in their impeachment power, as the executive branch has power in influencing the legislative branch through its veto power. See, there's all these different things, and it's held together very delicately. One clip that was made fun of Kamala Harris one time by MAGA was her saying, and I remember watching it going, no, that's an important point. It's weird you think that's silly, that democracy and our institutions are incredibly powerful on one hand. We have created a world order. We have established a really international community all structured around democratic norms. We are the most powerful country in the world, and we're a democratic country. So there's a power. There's an oomph to democracy and democratic principles. But there's also an incredible delicacy. There's an incredible fragility to democracy. And what you learn is that you have to have among the participants a respect for it. Otherwise, it goes bye-bye. All right, so you're probably asking, how could this be defended? Well, Scott Jennings of Furrowed Brow fame, he tried his very best, and it didn't go particularly well.
Where you stand. If a district court judge rules in a way that the president dislikes, should the president listen or should the president defy?
If a district court judge tries to usurp the authority of the chief executive of this country, he should absolutely defy it. There's a difference between broad policy decisions and discrete disputes between parties. That's the difference. If I want a policy decided, I'll take it to the Supreme Court.
What about checks and balances?
Well, Scott, you're
of a district court judge who elected them.
What I can't get with is you talking in these bizarre, broad generalities.
It's not bizarre.
Every single one of these cases deals with a discrete issue, okay? It deals with funding. It deals with with certain constitutionally or statutorily appointed roles. Every single one of these things is a distinct thing, and they're all being dealt with by different judges. So it's not broad swaths of policy here. When the court says Congress appropriated this money, you must unfreeze it while we litigate this. Why can't Trump comply with that?
So you're saying that a judge should decide how and when money is spent
a judge is saying,
for years, and not the president of the United States?
Let me explain
You're a governor,
a little bit more. Let me explain it a little bit more slowly. A judge is saying,
you don't have to talk to me like that.
Yeah, well, that's how you talk to everyone else, Scott. How's it feel? Great job here from Abby Phillip. I love when they'll say stuff. I'm trying to think of an example, but they'll go, wait, whoa, are you saying that, what, the sky is blue? And it seems like the tone is all their viewers need to go, see, yeah, the liberals must be insane. No, what you're saying, yes, the court can say you're not following the law by trying to unilaterally freeze and destroy agencies and funds that are supposed to go to those agencies. If you want to make such a massive change, you go through the constitutional democratic process that Congress participates in passing laws. That's our system. So no matter what tone you put in it, yes, that's the point of the judiciary, is to say, oh, that's not a power that you have. This is not about, are we going to adjust the budget of this agency? This is not about, oh, there was a storm here, so let's pause funds because the payment system's been broken or the delivery system has been paused because of that. It's none of those things. This is, we want to have a power over lawmaking and breaking, essentially, that the executive branch doesn't have.
You're a
A
governor.
little bit
you
more.
know.
Let me explain it a little bit more slowly. A judge is saying
You don't have to talk to me like that.
Congress.
I have a position on this, and you have an
Okay.
opinion. We can disagree.
Yeah, but I'm saying you listen to me because you're not listening and you're making claims that are not connected to the facts. The judge is saying
Maybe you are.
Congress appropriated a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
We need to litigate this.
Okay.
While we litigate this, we're going to put a hold on the actions that you took that might be unconstitutional.
So while we
That's
litigate,
part of the process. Why
this,
can't-
I'm
why
a
doesn't
judge
that
and
work?
I'm in charge of the executive branch, and you're not. Forget it.
Yeah,
I totally
you just
disagree.
can't compel the executive branch to spend the dollars. You can't do that. They
Okay.
can't say we're going to start. The
Have
judges
you
are going to
heard
start
of
writing
the
the checks. They have every
impoundment?
right to
Have you
hold that
heard
back.
of the Impoundment Control Act of 1974?
No.
Okay, well, let me play this. let me play
And by the
this.
way, none of your viewers have
Okay,
either.
well, I'm gonna
I can explain it in a
I'm gonna
sentence.
play this clip for you. This is in Congress.
Well, again, he says it like it's a slam dunk. No. And neither do your viewers. No, you're the one who. Well, then. Not going to say that.
Congress. Russ Vought, who is the architect of a lot of this, was being questioned in Congress about the Impoundment Control Act, which actually says that the executive branch should spend the money how Congress appropriated it. Here's what he said is going on right now in the federal government.
Do you believe the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 is the law of the land that you must follow?
It is the law of the land. As you know, the president has run on that issue. He believes it's unconstitutional. For 200 years, presidents had the ability to spend less than an appropriation if they could do it for less. And we have seen the extent to which this law has contributed to waste, fraud, and abuse.
So, Ellie, this is the law of the land. They might be wanting to challenge it, but it is the law.
Right. The Impoundment Control Act says essentially the president cannot block money allocated by Congress. To the power of district court judges, and I understand your point, Scott. I understand the frustration people have when a district court judge blocks a broad mandate from the chief executive, the elected chief executive. Ultimately, the big issues go up to the Supreme Court. But I guess I would ask both of you, what if a district court judge...
Yeah, and we'll get into the hypothetical there in a second. But this is not about you find a more efficient way to enforce or execute a certain law or to fund a certain program. And so, yeah, you had cost savings. Beautiful. That's not what this is about. This is about wanting to stop initially all federal assistance and to just, despite what's written in law, to just end complete institutions in our government. Just eliminate them. USAID, NIH wanting to gut that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Department of Education, that is at the foundation of this. This is not a nuanced, because I get how there can be nuance as you get into the nitty gritty. That's not what this is. This is a brazen attempt to execute or deploy powers that you really don't have. But moving on from that, and interestingly, then I'm happy Sununu admitted he didn't know what the particular law was at issue here. But then why are you asserting such an aggressive stance if you don't?
Point though, you made a really good point that there have been judges that shut down some of President Biden's executive actions, and they understand, the Biden administration understood that
And he ignored
the
it.
checks and balances.
The Supreme Court tried to stop me, but they never will.
But not
Who
in the
said
way
that?
that Donald
Who said
Trump
that?
is.
Who said
Not
that?
in the way that
Joe
Donald
Biden.
Yeah,
Joe
but
Biden.
Donald Trump
Scott,
has-
he actually didn't ignore it.
He
That's
did.
right.
They continue to plow
no,
forward with student
No, he
aid. How
didn't.
much did
No,
they spend?
no,
No,
let me set the record
He
straight.
actually got dinged
didn't.
on the
I
student loan
hated
debt
the
forgiveness.
student loan forgiveness policy.
What did he say
Hold
out
on.
loud?
I thought
What
it
did
was.
he say
I
out
thought it
loud?
was a ridiculous
didn't
policy.
ignore it.
I thought it was unconstitutional. I predicted it would get struck down. It did get struck down, and I
didn't
applauded.
ignore it.
He did not ignore it, though. He went and tried under a different law.
So he ignored
You're
it.
allowed. No,
That's
that's
not ignoring it. That
So
is
he
trying
not
to
ignoring
be
it. He's trying to
under
do it.
law.
He's
He
trying to do
really
it.
defied it.
But let me just understand where you.
Yeah, so that's just proving the dishonesty when they're doing a false equivalency there, because Biden was told by the Supreme Court, the way that you're trying to relieve student debt, you can't. And Biden went, dang it. That's why the comprehensive approach to student debt relief failed, which is one of the things we went, dang it. A part of his agenda failed, but then not in the way, not by the mechanism that the Supreme Court said he couldn't do it. He kept trying to implement student loan relief initiatives that didn't violate the Supreme Court ruling, which is why the Supreme Court never had to come in, and there was never a successful challenge brought that would cause this and say, you're violating our ruling, as did the judge in the Trump case. Because he did respect it, which was a big blow to a bunch of the people who thought their student loans were going to be forgiven. So it's not the same thing. Trump could try to find different ways using different laws or different approaches to accomplish the same goal. And then if he keeps getting challenged, then he would respect those things. And he can also appeal, but I doubt even the super conservative Supreme Court would be able to justify some of the things, as I said in a different segment, that Trump has been doing. But I think you get the point on that, wanting to usurp the power of Congress and also the power of the judiciary. How they don't see how dangerous that is, I don't know. On a different topic, Chris Sununu said this about tariffs.
I certainly get the steel issue for Trump, for Biden as well. But on prices, people are wondering, when are the groceries going to go down? When are the housing costs going to go down? When are the inputs into their lives going to go down?
Effectively, they're not, though, right? That would be deflation. When we say price is going to, it means they finally stabilize at about a 1% inflation. If you had everything go down 10%, that might sound great, but that means we have a massive economic crisis in the country, right?
Exactly.
So when we talk about price stabilization, we want it to get back to about 1%.
That's not what y'all were talking about, though, was it? Isn't that crazy? That's what he's saying now? All of them we're going to bring costs down. We're going to bring costs down. We're going to bring costs down. Trump says energy prices are going to come down 50%. What did I say? A situation where that happens would be a real economic problem that would cause such a thing. But no, MAGA said, oh, he's going to do it. It's going to be great. It's going to be perfect. And then he gets elected and he starts implementing policies that do the opposite. And the response of his defenders is, well, you don't really want deflation. So that would cause a big problem because the types of cuts you're holding him to would cause an economic problem. What? That's what we said. That's what we said. And you called us incorrect. So this is the story. It's like he's doing all the things that he said he was going to do in one category of things that are the things that most Americans, even those who voted for him, are not going to like the impact of. But then he's not doing the very few things that actually contributed to getting him elected that people were lied to about, like his price cutting initiatives. And instead is making those problems worse. And his defenders, they're right along with it. That's the situation we're in. Share your thoughts in the comments.